Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
8:06 here in your nation's capital. It's O'Connor and Company, the morning show of record here in the United States. Coming up in 30 minutes, we're going to check in with Adam Gullett. He's with Accuracy Media. He's been the tip of the spear there on fighting against anti-Semitism on Ivy League campuses. We've got another pro-terrorist encampment at Yale, and meanwhile Harvard is suing the Trump administration so they can keep up their anti-Semitic ways. What a time to be alive. Adam Gullett joining us in 30 minutes. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp. Good morning, Mercedes. Do you like the pronunciation, the soft D there? Mercedes. Thank you. Joining us right now, KT McFarland, former Trump National Security Advisor. And gal around town. Good morning, Mercedes. KT, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
So it looked like there were indications that they are close between Russia and Ukraine, except apparently, according to Wall Street Journal report, and Zelensky himself says Ukraine will not illegally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about here. So we're not going to have peace unless Russia gets out of Crimea. They occupied Crimea in 2014 during the Obama administration. Obama and Biden did nothing about it. And now this is going to be the final sticking point? Really?
I mean, you can make the argument that because of what Obama and Biden didn't do, in other words, they didn't object, they didn't do anything to prevent or to help or to stop the takeover of Crimea, that Russia was emboldened to say, Crimea, that's the appetizer, now I'm going for Ukraine. So it really is their fault in a lot of ways. And then the second reason it's their fault is because of Biden's energy policies. Russia had a windfall of over $100 billion, which it has used to pay for the Ukraine war. So, look, I think that Zelensky, he just can't bring himself to peace. No matter what happens, he just has to keep saying, let's go retrade that. It's like when you go to a closing of the house and somebody always says, well, there's one more thing.
Right. Well, quick follow-up here, though. Is he using very specific language here by saying that they won't legally recognize the occupation? Can they reach peace with Russia occupying Crimea, with Ukraine still saying, well, we don't legally recognize that occupation? Or will this stand in the way of peace?
Is it a distinction without a difference? Ukraine isn't going to get Crimea back. Russia controls Crimea. The Crimeans are happy with the situation. And so for any goal that Zelensky says, well, I'm not going to sign this as long as I have to recognize the facts on the ground. I mean, I'm just not really sure where they're going with it and why Zelensky is even bringing it up other than a sort of a chest beating. Hey, look, I'm really a tough guy. I'm not going to bend to Russia. I'm not going to rewrite my maps to say Gulf of America.
Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, KT, is the fact that he wants to keep the European allies in his pocket. I mean, this is Zelensky doing this. This idea that, there was some, I was reading through X yesterday, and they were saying breaking, President Trump has reached a deal with Russia and Ukraine. Mm-hmm. I don't see it happening. I just don't see Zelensky wanting to compromise. I don't see Russia trying to compromise. And as President Trump said, it was under Barack Obama that Crimea was lost. So it was during the weakness. And think about it. It was during the time of Biden that Putin, invaded Ukraine. But yet Zelensky is still trying to make his pitch of give me more money, give me more money. I just don't see an end to the war, even with Trump trying.
Well, President Trump said, look, you can cut a deal now and you can go to peace and then, rebuild and go about your lives. Or if Ukraine wants to keep fighting for another 3 years, fine, they'll lose thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of more people, but they're going to lose. The reality is, as much as nobody in Ukraine, that Zelensky, Boris Johnson, all the others, they don't want to admit it, but Ukraine is losing the war. Even with all of America's assistance, with everybody's assistance, Ukraine is losing the war. Slowly, grindingly losing the war. And until you wrap your head around that, you'll never want an agreement. I mean, I was stunned this morning in reading Boris Johnson's Twitter feed where he says, well, Ukraine should never go along with this. This is so terrible for Ukraine to say that they can't join NATO, that they can't get this, that they can't get that. And it's completely unrealistic. You can have ambitions for Ukraine, and Boris Johnson clearly had them, and he clearly encouraged Zelensky. But without anything to back it up, it means nothing. In fact, you could say that it's really encouraging Zelensky and others to fight to the last living man. I mean, I become sort of an expert on World War I these days, and it was the leaders kept saying, fight, 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 and yet they lost a whole generation of men, totally screwing up their societies, their social structures, their economies for a generation. And it's because they just couldn't bring themselves to say, okay, I have to admit it, we didn't get everything we wanted.
KT McFarland's our guest. Let's turn to China real fast. Again, the tariff talk, you have been indicating since day one that this is ultimately all about China. It appears as though there is engagement over those policies. Trump says that they're actively discussing the tariffs. Beijing says that's not true. Treasury Secretary Bessent is engaged, though, as well. What do you make of the headlines and the conflicting reports between Beijing and D.C.?
Not a lot. I think that the guy I'm listening to is Scott Bessent, who is in his prior life was probably the world's leading expert on macroeconomics, macro trading, and so he knows exactly what he's doing. There's definitely a game plan, and the writ large of the game plan is that the United States doesn't manufacture stuff anymore. As a result, the United States has hollowed out the Midwest and the middle class, and it can't go on. China, on the other hand, manufactures a lot of stuff, but their people don't buy it. So the whole system is out of whack. And what the Trump administration is doing is saying, okay, I know it's not terrible right now, but we are going down the path of destruction. This is our one moment to change it. We're never going to be in a better position economically to do it or politically to do it, and we've got to do it. And the change is that China cannot continue these policies that it's had. Look, China's ripped everybody off. And the deal was that China would say, you want to enter our markets, you want to sell your goods, Germany, France, America, and our markets, then we want all of your intellectual property. Then we want to make sure that we get really preferential treatment in having our goods go into your markets. Oh, and by the way, we're really not going to honor our initial pledge to you. So as a result, all these countries have been ripped off. And when the Chinese are saying that all the Europeans and others are coming to look for a deal with China instead of America, really? Well, good luck with that, because Germany's not selling cars in China. Germany's selling cars in America, and Germany needs the American market.
Well, and China they've implemented their own made in China type of policies where you have the communist government, basically investing billions of dollars into their own companies so that they can have innovative technologies, research and development, because they don't want to be reliant on the U.S. either. They don't want to be reliant on these other countries. So, I mean, China is a serious threat. And then they're as you mentioned, KT, going into these countries, to basically put military installations, build infrastructure. So this is the only time we have to be tough on China. Do you think President Trump is going to be able to get the job done?
Only President Trump could get the job done. Anybody else would have crumbled under the pressure. President Trump is just tough enough and determined enough, and he knows. He's been talking about this for 30 years. He knows it's the only time to do it, and he knows that this is the moment, and he knows that this is what he's been put in the White House to do, is to reorder this global trading system to no longer be the world ripping off America and no longer China ripping off everybody. And he's going to, I think he will stay the course. But he does need to have some successes soon. And I think that's why you see when Scott Bessent comes out and says, well, we're talking to the Indians, we're talking to the Japanese, we're talking to the British, we're talking to a number of countries about having bilateral trade agreements really soon. Once that starts happening, then all the countries in the world will say, okay, what am I going to choose? Am I going to choose having access to the world's largest market of consumers, America? Or am I going to choose to somehow stick with China? They're going to all be forced to choose with America unless they really want to see their economies crumble.
We love KT McFarland, and I speak on behalf of a grateful nation. KT, thanks for joining us. Always good to talk with you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.